A software security company experienced budget cuts because they weren't meeting their revenue goals. The CRO suggested that they cut one of their newer products because the pipeline in Salesforce for this product was very lean. When the company announced the product phase-out, the sales team was flooded with angry calls and emails from customers. The sales leaders, shocked themselves, sent those customer complaints along to leadership, asking why they had decided to do this. Didn't they know that there were many customers considering switching over to this product from a competitor due to its innovative technology? When the sales team was asked why that demand was not reflected in their pipeline, the team shared that the information on these opportunities were in the account notes section of their CRM. If the company had ThunderAct, they would have been able to see how often the new product name was documented across the CRM, instead of being limited to only the opportunities and the products they included. A promotion around the product might have resulted in much better results. To learn more about ThunderAct's incredible AI-powered data analysis and business advisory capabilities, visit ThunderAct.com to start a free trial.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us again. Up next, we have another incredible interview lined up for you with Reuven Shelef and Noi. Take it away.
Thank you, Ashley. Hi, Reuven. How are you?
Hello, hello.
How is your day going?
It's a conference day. That hasn't happened for a long time, so I'm very excited.
Likewise. That's so great to have you with us, and thank you for joining. Maybe right before I start throwing my questions at you, I do want to say that you're part of Out of the Box Consulting, which is a partner of ThunderAct. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and about Out of the Box.
Sure. So I started Out of the Box consulting just about 16 years ago when I moved from Israel to California, to the Silicon Valley. It was after I served in various positions in high-tech companies, startups typically acquired by larger corporations. I did engineering, board design for 3Com, and for many years. But from the very first project that I did, I was interested in the bigger picture and why are we doing that and who are the customers and let's visit them and how are we manufacturing, where are we manufacturing, how can we design the product better to manufacture en masse without too many reworks. So my focus along my career, and I moved from engineering to other departments, as I used to identify problems and go to address them, even if it meant to move to a different department and figure things out. And what I discovered after years of doing that in various capacities, various parts of the organization, I started to see patterns and see where things failed. And I started paying attention mainly to the cross-functional aspect of things. And then other things came about, and I got to implement Oracle 11i for service and support, and that was my formal introduction to the world of CRM. And that was just before, that was the last position that I held before I moved to California. And then when I moved here, I wasn't sure what I'm going to do. And a friend called me from back in the 3Com days, said, I'm in a startup in San Jose, come and help us with business processes around service and support. And I came, and it was a contract for 3 months, and they had Salesforce. So I discovered I had sysadmin credentials to the Salesforce system that I never heard of, and no one basically knew about it at that time. It was the very beginning. And I figured that in a few minutes, I just did what a few months ago took a bunch, like 2 weeks, 4 engineers, and a lot of money to accomplish. So I learned everything there was to learn about Salesforce at the time, and I became a Salesforce expert in addition to running my management consulting practice, which that project actually introduced me to the world of consulting and bringing forth the right thing for the business. And that's what I've been doing since then. So kind of 16 and a half years and hundreds of projects later, here we are.
Wow, it's a very vast experience. And obviously, you know your way around Salesforce. So I want to ask you the first question. So we know that many companies, and especially the large companies, are using Salesforce to manage much more than just their sales opportunities. That's kind of where it started maybe, but it's no longer the case. So what kind of information do you see being captured today in Salesforce?
Yeah, indeed, Salesforce as the name says something, and they got recommendations to change it several times because it's much more than Salesforce automation. However, a good brand, and I'm not a marketing person, but a brand name you don't really want to change when it's a household name already. So yeah, in most cases, Salesforce is used for the basics, sales, pre-sales, so marketing campaigns and lead management, and post-sales, the service and support, etc. That's the core. Now there is the sales-related stuff, and this is where how companies are using it beyond the built-in functionality. Some is built in, but we typically extend this functionality when it comes to a few areas. Sales-related, so tracking MEDDIC. Every VP sales will come up with their version of MEDDIC or any other type of methodology to track sales. For anyone not in sales, MEDDIC stands for metrics, economic buyer, decision criteria, decision process, the pain, it has to be an I, identifying the pain of the prospect, and who's a champion. So tracking that, tracking meeting notes, which I know is a big part of ThunderAct, tracking trials, POCs, if that's part of the business model, competitors, partners, and it's a moving target, and what you want to capture about each one of these things changes over time. So it's important to attend to that and build it right. Another area which companies naturally use Salesforce for is what I call the edge of ERP. So as we know, there's CRM, there's ERP, and there are certain things in ERP that are strictly ERP, like the financial system, the accounting. But then there is a gray area. So I'm moving to the other side that is the closest to CRM. For example, orders and contracts and assets that are tracked. So on one hand, someone coming from the ERP domain will say, well, that's clear ERP. But then someone who's working in the CRM, let's say support, servicing those assets, they need them in the CRM. So the gray area between CRM and ERP is an area where we build a lot in Salesforce and companies use it. There are even extreme situations where we will build a mini ERP system, very tailored, customized to the specific need within Salesforce. And there are at least 2 significant ERP systems that are built on Force.com. And whoever doesn't know, Salesforce, beyond the suite of applications, the broad suite of applications that Salesforce has today, it's all built on Force.com, which is a platform, and it's open for development. So entrepreneurs went and built all kinds of applications, big and small, that run on top of Force.com and are fully integrated as part of the platform. Another area that we see people using Salesforce for, and we don't only see, we build this stuff, it doesn't relate to sales at all. Two quick examples that come to mind are a mental health recovery organization. It uses Salesforce to track the people that were hospitalized and now completed their hospitalization and became mentors to others who are going through that process of coming out of that distress and coming back to normal life. So they're using the system to track the matches between the mentors and mentees and provide metrics that are critical for their board of directors and the funding that they get. They couldn't do it before they use some kind of a system. So they're using Salesforce for that. And another example is HR recruiting and onboarding, built completely on on force.com, people in the recruiting industry can see the tangent, how an application that was built for sales could actually be used for processes that are not sales. But if you dig deep, you can see that it's actually lead management and opportunity management and that progression. So it can make sense.
That's very interesting. And I know that in some previous jobs that I had, we used to call it an abuse of the product, but actually, I mean, there is some relationship to it. So it's not a true abusive. And obviously, we're talking about large amounts of data that is being stored in Salesforce and in these complementing systems. What are the major challenges that come with managing all of these data, especially when it comes to companies or the other tools that are working with them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the major challenges are, surprisingly enough, in my opinion, not related to the amounts of data. The challenges come from how the data is managed. And sometimes I'm asked, what it will take if we have 1,000 records in the system, or what it will take if we have 100,000 records in the system. From my perspective, it does not matter. Of course, there are architecture considerations and governor limits and all that, but set aside the technical aspect of things, when it comes to data management, one of the things that I preach time after time is it's not about how much the data, it's how the data is managed. And in regards to Salesforce and what's important in implementing Salesforce and managing the Salesforce instance, it's really important for people to ask the right questions at the right time. And people have a hard time asking the right questions. And I won't go into why, that's a whole OD, organization development conversation that we can have another time. But what is the end-to-end process? What are the metrics that we're ultimately interested in? How do the processes interact with each other? Where do the processes cross between the functions? And who is the owner of each part of the process as it moves between functions? What I see is even when people ask the right questions, there is a problem in this day and age of attention span, as we all know, with all the dings and bleeps and meetings and people, even when the right questions are asked, people sometimes don't follow through in answering the questions asked properly. So you end up with a system that has part of the data points, or the data points are not governed properly. So, a typical example, I'll probably talk about it more, given what you're interested in, is fields being mandatory or not, and when are they mandatory. So building the system correctly, doing things properly, is a key for being able to manage large amounts of data. We didn't invent anything new. It's kind of the good old define the business processes that need to be implemented, define the metrics, define the functional requirements and specifications of the system that you're going to build according to the processes and metrics defined. This is, if you take one thing out of our entire conversation today, is this: just articulate really good what you want to accomplish, and then build the system according to what you want to accomplish. Of course, do it properly. That's where most companies fail. Most of the projects we do some new implementations, and we do it. It's a pleasure because we get to do it from the ground up properly. But most of the projects, we come in after people did all kinds of weird things in Salesforce because it's so easy to do. Like I said in the beginning, my experience is still today that experience, and people subscribe to Salesforce and create a big mess. So we come and fix. That would be the critical point, and that's our starting point. We expand here and there to get the clarity of what has to be done from the business perspective, and then tailor the system accordingly. That makes data management a lot easier. Now, regarding I think you asked about integrating with other systems as well, and that's a key point. So when you integrate between systems, it depends on the integration, but many of the integrations create a duplication of a database. Even if it's not the entire database of Salesforce, Salesforce is a database of databases. But if you take and duplicate one of those databases in another system, and then they have to sync, this is a source of a lot of disaster. And actually most of the big problems, there are small problems, big problems in data management. The biggest problems and the problems that take the most effort and cost to fix are the ones that involve system integration. So my guideline is, if you don't have to integrate, don't. Find a way to do it with less systems. And if you have to integrate, then do it right. And there is more to it. I won't go in, I know.
I think when we were kind of prepping for this session, when we got to talk about this point of if to integrate, you also had a very important point of mentioning that sometimes you will lose some of the functionality by using one tool, but on the other hand, you'll also get rid of the hassle of building the integration to it, which is a very, very important point, and which kind of brings me from a weird angle to my next question. So a big reason for the desire to want to build the integrations between the systems is that obviously teams work together and not together. We still have silos, while we do see some intents of trying to be more collaborative, and different roles or different functions live in different tools. So my question to you is, what do you think would make an impact, or the most impact on creating better collaboration and better cooperation between those different teams?
Yeah, getting people on the same page is really important, and I wish people would do it more. We are in an era where, and I'm not talking about COVID, I'm talking before COVID, in the last 10 years plus, people stopped getting together even when they can. So two buildings in a campus, and they'll do a phone call or a conference call rather than meeting in person. So they're less on the same page by definition. In a way, COVID is improving a little bit, because we're getting used to screen sharing, we're getting more used to whiteboarding, etc. Probably maybe someone will argue against, but in my opinion, there's an opportunity here. From a Salesforce perspective, from a CRM perspective, or from any system, information system perspective, I would say there are a few things to attend to. Yes, there can and should be sometimes data segregation. There is a difficult word to say, I'm practicing it, compartmentalization. Yes, it's important sometimes, but it should be done with proper thought to who needs to see what, really needs to see what. And if they have to see part of that, don't hide everything. Hide only what has to be hidden and expose what is worthwhile exposing, so they can do their job better. Companies that have, whether built on the same system or not, if the salesperson or the CSM, the customer success manager, cannot see the open cases or the case history, support cases of their client before they interact with them, that's a problem. And by default, they're not on the same page. When it's two different systems, it's harder, because why would salespeople have access to Zendesk? Let's say if you're using Zendesk, and I'm not recommending Zendesk, by the way. It has its advantages, but integrating Zendesk and Salesforce is an ordeal. So choose diligently which data should be given to which people. Teach people to obtain the data that they need. When it's a company, like I said, cross-functional aspect, attend to the needs of each group and then fulfill those needs. This is a failure that we see time and time after time. There was a project several years ago that we did that involved 40 people from an organization here in the Valley, from the various departments. And it was an ongoing struggle of those, even the executives of those departments would literally fight in meetings because they could not agree on the data that's in their systems. It wasn't built properly. It wasn't built starting from the place of, okay, who are the different stakeholders and how we can serve them best? How can the system serve them best? So those are a few aspects of how things could be better for collaboration. Of course, there are many aspects of how to build a system that is user-friendly and people get the value out of the system, etc. Yeah, I can go on, but our time is short.
So speaking about building systems wrong, and maybe to take kind of a different twist on it, I got to ask you, Reuven, how many times have you seen data in Salesforce being DGFH, DGFH?
Actually, my favorite, when I have a mandatory field that I don't want to enter, I put a dot if it's a text field. I see many people actually put the combination of two letters, F and U. So that's also
very subtle.
In pick lists, so that's in text fields, right? In pick lists, we'll see complete, like, out of context options. Why? Because they didn't have the right options to choose from. And if there is an other option, sometimes there is no other option. And if there is another option, there is nowhere to put what the other is. So I can't understand who would design such a system where you don't know, it's a mandatory field. It's important for you to know, and then there is nowhere to enter the data. That's really weird. So quick tip, if you have an other pick list value and it's an important field, if it's not critical, then no problem. But if it's important, have a little text field that becomes mandatory if you choose other in the pick list value. And then you can periodically go through the data and improve your metadata, improve the pick list values. It's a struggle, and it ties also, I said, attend to the needs of the groups. Many people using systems, and of course Salesforce will tell you, I hate the system, there are so many fields that I have to fill out, and it's just a hassle and I can't do it, especially if it's sales, right? I have to sell. Yeah, the system can be built in a way that the mandatory fields are there, but not all the fields are mandatory at the same time, and not always mandatory. Choose diligently, know the process, build the system according to the process. I said that maybe 5 times. It's critical. If you're not going to send a quote anytime soon, don't make the fields that are mandatory for the quote mandatory when you open the opportunity. But before the user can put the opportunity stage into quote sent or sending quote, make sure, validate all those fields and enforce them. We can also, these days, Salesforce is so advanced, we can build a system to actually tunnel the users through the process, so they don't have to think too much. It comes naturally because the system is providing them what they need at the right time, helping them. And the only way to design systems like that is to actually be on the same page with the people that need to use it, and have on the same page those people and the people that need to consume the data from the system. Everyone should see the value from it, not only management, but up to the last user. And then we'll see less dots and DGFs. And
so if to summarize that, listen to your customers and make smart decisions based on data and your customers. Right?
Mm-hmm. And the process, yeah, based on the process. What do you want to accomplish? Yeah.
Of course, great. Well, we're actually already out of time, but I do have one more question for you. Maybe you can answer that in a couple of questions, in a couple of minutes. Can you share with us like an interesting project that you worked on when it comes to Salesforce, kind of to either give us inspiration or keep us away from these kinds of projects?
No, actually, there are projects. A few jump to my mind, and my favorite projects are the ones that actually impact human beings. sometimes I'll have a project that the people who are impacted by it are in tears, literally tears of joy. And I had that several times, and it's just, this is why I do what I'm doing, is because of that impact on human beings. And when someone is released, for example, this marketing director, I wasn't sure if she was a director or manager then, but a channel marketing manager in a storage appliance company, who spent more than half of her time, 20 hours a week, over 20 hours a week, in just receiving channel sales incentives from the field and checking in the systems if they should be approved or not. And she would crunch all that data and respond accordingly. And that would take about 30 minutes per request. Now, they were growing rapidly, and she was spending over 20 hours a week doing that. We automate I love this story. We actually wrote a case study about it and never published it. But if anyone's interested, let me know, and I'll be happy to send it to you. But we basically we automated the entire thing end to end. And instead of 30 minutes, it happened automatically in sub-second. That released that person to do all the marketing that they needed to do and not deal with this. So the projects like this that really have a human impact are the dearest to my heart. And thankfully, after doing this for so long, I have a long list of those, but these are my favorite.
That's wonderful. Reuven, thank you so much for sharing from your knowledge. I'm sure some will be reaching out to you. Thank you, Reuven, Out of the Box Consulting.
My pleasure, anytime. Enjoy the conference.
Of course. We'll continue in just three more minutes with Adi Cavalier, is going to talk to us about how customer data is the product manager's best friend. Make sure to join us in just 3 more minutes. Thank you, Reuven.
Thank you.